Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, it's the XYZs of EEE. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I'm joined, as I'm always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. I do have a question for you, Patrick.
Yeah, lay it on me.
I feel like one thing that I sometimes use these cold opens for is like life advice.
Yeah,
You
sometimes you ask me life advice, like, how where do you buy pants?
Yeah, exactly. This is one of those where do you buy pants questions.
Uh-huh.
For you as an individual, if you bought a thing of blueberries
Right.
and they're
Something I feel strongly about.
they're in the fridge for a couple of days,
Uh-huh.
you pull them out,
Yeah.
and like 2 or 3 of the berries have like mold growing on them.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, you throw out those blueberries.
Okay. Do you throw out the 3 or do you throw out like
you throw out the 3. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because they're individual berries, right?
Uh-huh.
I will also, not throw out a loaf of bread if a slice has mold on it.
Okay, got it.
Or if a chunk of cheese has mold on it,
Yeah.
I'll cut that off.
Okay.
And be like, the rest of this I'm still gonna eat.
Okay, this is good. This is good to know. And it's not that I don't trust you, but I'd be interested
But
to know
now you want people to write in, you want doctors to write in, someone with more credentials than me who can tell you for sure.
I would just be curious. Everything you're saying makes sense to me.
Are you concerned about there being pre-mold on the other
Yeah,
ones?
I guess I don't know what I'm concerned about.
Right.
This is
right.
a frequent conversation I have with my medical doctors. Where I'm like, I don't know what I'm concerned about.
Right, you just have concerns.
I just have concerns.
Right.
Yeah. And so, okay, but that's just good to know.
But I mean,
But yes, I mean, I guess when you say it like that, I am concerned about pre-mold. I don't think that's
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Well, but so let me just share a recent example where my half measure approach to being safe came back to bite me in the ass.
Okay. A cautionary tale?
A cautionary tale, yes. I was recently visiting my brother. He has a cat. I'm allergic to cats. Cats know when you're allergic to them, so this cat came up to me and was wanted attention, wanted to snuggle, and I will oblige a cat with some pets and some scratches because I'm not a monster. But this cat was sitting on the couch next to me and wanted to snuggle up and get in my lap, and I was like, no, not in my lap. But the cat was pressed against my leg for a long time, and I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll just wash my hands afterwards, and then I'll leave, and I won't be around the cat dander. I did all these things. Then I go to the airport so I can fly back to LA. My flight is delayed, eventually canceled. I end up spending the night in the Denver airport, which means I didn't change my clothes all night long. And then into the next morning, didn't shower because I can't in the airport, in the Denver airport. By the time I get home, Mark, I have a huge rash
Oh no!
all up and down my leg and around my groin area because the cat's dander was there and just pressed in after being there all night. So this was me being I'll just wash my hands, I'll be fine, that'll be good enough. And that's what happened. So maybe you'd end up eating pre-mold and die.
Yeah. All right. I feel like
One logically feeds into the other.
I
right?
feel like we have figured this out.
Right.
I know my course of action going forward.
Right. Don't just wash your hands is my point. Mark, if you want to do more than just wash your hands, you can support us on our Patreon, patreon.com/Nintendo Cartridge Society, a place where you can check out the bonus materials that we are providing. There's some cool stuff over there, including the conclusion to NCS Detective Club, a miniseries we're doing where we're talking about the great detective shows of television history. It was a good time, a great time, I would say. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, check it out. Otherwise, we've got a new miniseries starting up in July, where we're going to start talking about American musical theater, and that's going to be great.
Yep, gonna be a lot of fun. Thank you to everybody who is a patron, and thank you to everybody who just listens to the show and supports us any way that you can.
That's right. It is support no matter what. Also, join our Discord. Email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society
At gmail.com.
We'll send you an invitation, and then you can get in there and have a great time talking about Nintendo stuff, or giving us advice on when to throw blueberries away or change our pants after hanging out with a cat. All right. Last thing. The programming reminder, I guess, is now obsolete. We return to normal programming next week.
Yeah, that's right. News
Okay.
episodes will be back.
Right. We'll
Unless, of course, because we're recording this ahead of time, unless, of course, something happened.
be back. Right. In,
In
which
which
case, it's already back.
Hi.
Look, no one knows. We're going to finish our ABCs of Nintendo's E3 right now. Mark, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Halfway through the alphabet?
Halfway through the alphabet. Already some good E3 memories covered in last week's episode.
Yes, both personal and, enjoyed from the comfort of our college dorm rooms, watching these things on the computer. M, would you like to go first? We are starting with M. We did A through L last week. This will be M through Z. Would you like to go first or would you like to go second?
I'll go first this time.
Great.
And I'm kicking us off with some Metroid talk. Specifically,
So will I.
Specifically, I want to talk about the announcements of Metroid Prime 4 and Samus Returns in 2017, and then
Interesting. So I want to talk about Metroid Prime 4 being teased in 2017 here, but I want to talk about Samus Returns later.
okay, well, because I'm also throwing Dread in here, and
Okay, okay, great.
yeah, the reason in the Dread at E3 2021, and the reason that I'm bringing these three up is, we've talked a lot last week and just in general about kind of the magic of E3 and the surprise factor and how fun that would be, and all of these were recent examples where Metroid existing was such an exciting moment.
Yes.
Like the announcement of Metroid Prime 4 and then like a remake of Return of Samus in 2017 was just like totally unexpected, really incredible. And then Dread in 2021, I remember watching it in my like bedroom and like gasping and cheering.
It's a genuine oh my god moment, especially because like you can see that it's Metroid and you're like, wow, cool, new Metroid, and then it says Dread and you're like, no way.
Yeah, which was a name or code name or whatever that we had heard about in 2005.
For like 12 years, yes.
Yeah, and then to see that they had like kept it was a real like fist pump moment.
Yeah.
And so those are recent like Metroid experiences with E3 that were just a lot of fun.
My M was also Metroid Prime 4, and just specifically that it was teased with the logo now 6 years ago, like 6 years ago last week at this point. And we've gotten the one update on it in that development was restarted and taken in-house by Retro, and someday we'll hear more about that game, I think.
Yeah, and maybe soon, but probably not.
No one knows. All right, very good. So then we'll go to my N, which I'm going to shout out the Nokia Theater, where Nintendo would do their, for the most part, did their live stage shows. I think they did one like the Kodak once. But regardless, that's normally where these things were before they decided like, hey, we should just do these as direct video presentations. But yeah, the Nokia Theater is, I just wanted to shout it out.
And my N is negative, as in Nintendo's most disliked video on YouTube for a very long time.
Oh, can I guess what this is?
It's also Metroid themed.
Oh,
if that's what
what?
If that's what you're guessing, yeah.
My guess was going to be that it was Wii Music related.
No, it's the Metroid Prime Federation Force
Oh,
trailer,
yeah, that tracks.
as revealed at E3 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the reaction to Metroid Prime Federation for which I guess like I don't really have any memory of this reveal, and I don't really have any memory of the immediate backlash to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I also tend to stay out of the more negative spaces on the
Yeah,
internet.
that's true.
But like, I'm totally fine seeing a game advertised and being like, that's not for me. I'm not going to play that. Or like, no, this one's not going to be any good. And that's fine. Never mind me ranting about everybody 1-2 Switch 2 weeks ago. Um, uh, so like seeing Metroid Prime Federation Forces doesn't hurt me. But like evidently was hurting someone.
Yeah, the reaction to it was very visceral, apparently. So yeah, I feel like Federation Force, a game I haven't played, but it feels very much like Triforce Heroes to me.
Well, and that's the thing that makes me think that it may secretly be good.
I know, and it's from by Next Level Games,
Right.
which is a good developer.
And like Triforce Heroes to this day retains a negative reputation because like you really can't play it by yourself. Like you do genuinely need to have friends playing it with you. But when you do, it's a really fun game.
Yeah, we had a great time playing it.
We had a great time playing it.
It does make me think, although difficult now because I didn't buy it before the eShop closed.
Right, it's like impossible.
But I guess we could probably find loose cards of it. But
or like pirated carts. Like I feel like that's something that we would be justified in getting pirated copies of.
But I feel like it would be fun to try Federation Force.
I agree.
And kind of like see what the deal is, because I whether the game is good or not or mediocre, I think the reaction to it, and people just really did not want Metroid Prime Federation Force. They wanted like Metroid Prime 4, or they wanted like a Metroid game, and we would eventually get all those things. But I feel like it just feels like a victim of timing.
Absolutely. Well, and just like a victim of what wasn't there, right? Like, you see the word Metroid and you're like, and then you see the word Prime and you're like, what? And then you get Federation Force and you're like, oh no.
My least favorite part of those series
is the dudes in the Federation, which like legit and fair. But yeah, the backlash to that was pretty palpable.
So my O is for Ouroboros.
Oh.
And the Ouroboros is like the symbol of the snake eating its own tail, but is also a symbol of rebirth or continuity and like all that kind of stuff. And this is just something that I had a lot of fun watching E3 videos, but then also like old E3 reaction videos. So
interesting.
So like E3 2021 is the Smash Brothers Melee reveal for GameCube, and E3 2020 or 2006 was Super Mario Galaxy and Metroid Prime 3. And so it's like the first time they showed footage of that for the Wii. And for that last one, so for the 2001 Melee reveal, that's in theater footage that you can watch. And then there's like one video on YouTube of at Nintendo, like the New York store, they were doing a live stream of E3 2006. And there's footage of reaction like in the room when they're showing Super Mario Galaxy and Metroid Prime 3. And it's just kind of like, it was fun for me to see that nothing really changes. Like they're showing Super Mario Galaxy, and that reaction we were describing to Odyssey is exactly the reaction that's happening in that room in Nintendo New York, where people are like, what is this? Oh, look at the graphics. This is so cool. Like Metroid Prime 3, people are like, the graphics. They just can't handle it. Same with like
the graphics.
The reaction we were having to talking about having to Smash Brothers Ultimate and all the character reveals is 100% what everybody in the audience is doing for Melee, where they're like, I can't believe it's Ness. Like all this like crazy stuff. Like it was fun for me to see how like the more things change, they stay the same. Like like fans are still excited about the same things. How awesome the graphic looks, the crazy characters that Nintendo pulls out of their library to including games, like all that fun stuff.
I'd never thought about the Ouroboros as a sign of rebirth so much as like self-destruction. I almost see it as the opposite. But your point is well made in that yeah, as we look back on these things over and over again, we are in fact eating our own tail. We're making a show about people making shows, right? Like, but it's still fun and exciting and like cool to get to relive those moments and sort of like remind yourself that these these are marketing beats. As a company is trying to sell you something, um, but it can also be meaningful and fun, and you can have a good time thinking about it and talking about it and watching. Mark, my O is original drawings of Super Mario Brothers level design, featured prominently in the E3 2015 presentation about Super Mario Maker. So there's a whole like section at the end of this presentation where it's just Miyamoto and shoot, another designer whose name I don't have written down here, going through like old folders of design documents and like pointing stuff out, being like, oh, here's a drawing of Mario in a Lakitu's cloud throwing a fireball from the original Super Mario Brothers. That never happened in that game, but you can do it in Super Mario Maker. And just like all this cool original art and all these like sketches and things that there's such a like sense of history about Super Mario Maker, the original, that like I think it's sort of like priced out in my head of like, it's because it's not really a part of the second game, right? The second game is like, we made a Mario Maker before, here it is again with more stuff. But the first game was like genuinely a celebration of where Mario came from on a like design and construction basis, right? It's not just like a celebration of the games, it's a celebration of the people who made them and the process of making them. And they did just a great job of doing that in the marketing materials for the game. And just by showing off like, World 1-1 on graph paper.
Yeah, I feel like, and the other part of that is really fun is I just feel like we don't get very many glimpses into like those original documents that Nintendo, I'm sure, has a huge archive, but we just don't see a lot of that stuff, the planning documents at all.
Yeah, and that is the kind of thing that makes me think that like, people are always worried about like Nintendo not being like good stewards of like video game preservation because they take their games off of markets and online stores and stuff. And that is true, and does make it hard. But also like, it seems like they have these libraries, right? Like these things are preserved somewhere. Like Square Enix may have lost the original files to the backgrounds in Final Fantasy VII, but like Nintendo's not going to do that. Like it feels like they've got stuff under lock and key.
Yeah, I wonder. I do wonder if they have like every game that they developed for like every library.
Right. And then also,
probably like the games that never came out, the Star Fox 2s that we just never see. Like, what Virtual Boy goodies are they hiding?
Oh, they're hiding so many.
How many more? How Nestor's Funky Bowling 2.
Do you think there exists a Super Nintendo cart with Star Fox 2 on it?
Oh, I wonder. Oh, a prototype one for sure.
Yeah. If they put that out like tomorrow, well, I mean, first of all, I would buy it. But you think it would sell? Yeah, I think it would sell.
I think
people
would
buy it. So that brings us to P. This is going to be a callback to last week when we were talking about the Luigi's Mansion pop-up. That's not what do I mean?
Like the demo area.
The activation at E3 2019. Pink bellhop uniforms. They have this like Luigi's Mansion that you go inside and you can play Luigi's Mansion 3. And the whole thing is like administered / kind of just like, were the people like proctoring the demo, were they wearing these bellhop
Not
uniforms?
that I remember.
Yeah, I don't think so either. They were just like the people outside and like sort of working the line. And it's this perfect like cotton candy Tim Burton aesthetic where like everything's a little bit too big and a little bit askew and the colors are super bright. And I think, Mark, we bonded over how much we like these pink bellhop uniforms.
That's true.
They just worked. I don't know.
It was a lot of fun. That was a very cool
mm-hmm.
setup for a demo.
Yeah, absolutely.
My P is for puppets. specifically the cold open from E3 2015 for Star Fox Zero that was created in collaboration with the Jim Henson Company and was just one of those things that is very Nintendo in it's like, well, why did they do it? And it's because
Right.
it was fun.
Because they wanted to.
Because they
thought it
wanted
would make
to.
it for a fun video.
Uh-huh. And so, like it opens with Iwata kind of like getting the gang together. And so the presentation, like a stage manager knocks on the, like a puppet stage manager. It's
Right.
very like the Muppet Show. A puppet stage manager knocks on Iwata's like dressing room door and is, it's time to go out. He opens the door and it's a puppet of Satoru Iwata. And he goes to Reggie's, dressing room, knocks on the door, and like there's a Reggie puppet, and then they get Miyamoto, and there's a Miyamoto puppet, and they're like walking down the hallway, and their like heads are moving in sync,
And
like
they-
left to right.
They're
like,
walking for like a long time.
It's
like
very cute.
They get these puppets but don't really do anything with them, which is the funniest part of it to me.
And so then they're like, they line up and they're in front of a white background and they're like beginning the presentation, and then Miyamoto's face begins to change. And he has kind of like like an animal muzzle, and then you turn to Iwata, and he's growing like rabbit ears, and Reggie's like turning into a bird. And as they like cut back and forth to each other, they keep transforming a little more until Miyamoto is like now just like a Fox McCloud puppet.
Yeah.
And Reggie is completely transformed into Falco, and Iwata has completely transformed into Peppy. And they're there to announce Star Fox Zero, and it's just so endearing and fun and silly, and there was no point to it other than it was a fun thing to do, and they gotta work with the Jim Henson Company.
Yeah.
It's just one of those delightful things that I feel like we in the new era of Nintendo have that's no longer the presentation style.
That's been sanded away for sure. Well, and a lot of that is just because like they take a lot of the like human part of it away, right? Like,
Yeah, like
we
the
get a lot of disembodied voices.
We get a
now.
lot of disembodied voices, and just like that, we talked about it last week. There was a chemistry between like Reggie Iwata and Miyamoto, and it felt
Yeah.
like a friendship, and
and like we wanted to see it.
yeah,
What's so interesting about that puppet thing is like it is totally just delivering to the audience what is a good show, regardless of how well it shows what the game is, right? Like, we like those three guys. We like seeing puppets. The puppet aesthetic is better than the aesthetic of the game itself. And like, I think people are always like, why don't we just get a Star Fox game that looks like Muppets? Like,
Right.
why isn't that what this looks like? And so it's a the rare E3 presentation that is like better than the game it is presenting.
yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's not that long. You can find it on YouTube.
It's great.
It's worth checking out.
Q.
My cue is quality of life, specifically the vitality sensor, as shown off by Satoru Iwata at E3 2009.
And released never.
Yes, that's right. So E3 2009, they show this thing off, but they don't talk about any gameplay. And basically, it's like if you've gone to the doctor's office, and a lot of times, they'll take your blood pressure, and while they're doing that, they're checking like your blood oxygen levels, and they do that by putting a little clamp on your index finger that has like a red light that is like measuring, which they're using to see like how much oxygen is in your blood. And that's essentially what this vitality sensor was, I guess. We never know. Like they talk about this thing, and Iwata at the time says we're going to show games off for it at E3 2010. They never do, and then it goes like we never hear anything about it, about the vitality sensor for a number of years, but they're asked about it occasionally, and then finally one time when they're asked about it, Iwata basically says like we got it to work for 9 out of 10 people. And I think this was in like 2014 maybe, like we got it to work for 9 out of 10 people, but for something like this it has to work for 10 out of 10 people, and the technology just isn't there, and so we're not going to do anything with it. So that wasn't the end of Nintendo's quality of life initiative. In fact, shortly after that, within the next year or two, they announced kind of this idea of quality of life being a whole new area of products that Nintendo wanted to get into. And they talk I think again like a few years later they are releasing patents and they're actually talking about this product that never ends up releasing, which is like a sleep monitor. So it's something that you would like put next to your bed and it would monitor your sleep and help you, I guess, like, which things like this exist today, but like determine how well you're
Pokemon Sleep,
sleeping.
of course.
Yeah, like that sort of thing.
Did that come out?
I
There was
don't know.
there
I
was
don't know.
there was like an update about it in a recent Pokemon
Day presentation.
Yeah, but I
can't remember if
I
that was
gotta
a
look into it.
release announcement.
I don't think it was, but there was like a Pokemon Go plus plus. And that was like a little like hockey puck that you would sleep
yeah,
with.
but wasn't there one of those that like lulls you to sleep or tells you a lullaby? So maybe Pokemon Sleep did come out.
Yeah, but I think that was, I don't know if that wasn't it coming out. That was just
A thing that will happen in the future.
We got to look into this.
All of this is
I'll
say
look it up.
that like so it was going to be this machine that sits on your nightstand, and then it wasn't until it was in 2020 that they finally said like we're not pursuing it, which I didn't realize it was that recent because that was during the life of this show, and I don't remember us.
I'm sure we talked about it.
I'm sure we talked. We must have.
Right.
But
we love that weird stuff.
Yeah.
Pokemon Sleep has not come out yet.
Okay.
It is just announced for summer 2023. So like
any day now.
We're in it now.
Perilously close. But anyways, quality of life, vitality sensor, E3 2009.
Very good. My cue, very broad here. Questions. Nintendo Directs often provide more questions than they do answers. But the sort of flip side of that is that then we get Nintendo Treehouse Live, which painstakingly provides those answers to us. If you encounter a question while watching a trailer for, Mario Galaxy or Pikmin 2 or whatever, there will be several hours of explanation and demonstration of what exactly they were talking about when they announced all these things. So I actually think it's very good that Nintendo is more about like asking those questions in the directs and in the E3 presentations, and then like leaving room for those answers. But I do always feel like we walk out of a Nintendo Direct being like, I don't know what X was.
Yeah, man, I really liked, and sometimes the Treehouse Lives were afterwards they would have game announcements in there. Am I wrong in saying that Samus Returns?
We'll get to it.
Okay,
we will get to
a
it
Nintendo
later
Treehouse
on.
Live reveal. Do you have a favorite Treehouse Live
that
demo?
One.
Okay, the one that for me that comes to mind, which for whatever reason really sold me on the game, was Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Oh wow!
I remember watching the Treehouse Live for it and watching like the classroom portions and walking like them running around the monastery and interacting with characters. And that's really when I was like, oh, this game is for me. This is a Fire Emblem that like speaks to me. So that is my personal favorite one.
My R is Resident Evil 4 check-in video. You referenced this last week about the when you were talking about Hookman, the sort of like prototype version of, or just the earlier version of Resident Evil 4 that ended up getting scrapped. But so this is that same like video package, and it's introduced by Shinji Mikami, who is the director of the game, and it is a bizarre video from start to finish. He starts off by saying he wants to address rumors that he's been fired by Capcom.
I know. I was trying to make sense of what that
I could not figure it out.
So the only thing that I could find that could possibly be related to it is this was like the time of like the Capcom 5.
Yes.
That really he was like the producer of Capcom Production Studio 4 or something like that. And they were really like, they delivered all of those games. It seems like this like, we are making these for Nintendo came from kind of like Shinji Mikami. And then the first one was called, what was it, like PN05?
Yeah, PN05.
PN05, which was kind of like, what was that game that starts with a V that he would later make? But kind of like a Bayonetta-esque, like action game like sort of thing. But it didn't review very well. And after that, he kind of like stepped down from, it was a big critical disappointment. And from that point, he like stepped down from being like the directly involved with like all of these games, and eventually he took over the direction of Resident Evil 4, and that's so I wondered if like and shortly after
Yeah,
that he
were
left.
there some rumors like
Yeah, so maybe like when he was stepping down as like the head of production of that specific of like Studio 4 or whatever, that's the only thing I could find that even like remotely made sense to me.
So the video doesn't get less weird as it goes on, because he's like talking to the camera and like who cares what he's saying? He's talking about like the development of the game is continuing, but there's like a text crawl across the bottom of the screen, and it's in the Resident Evil font, so this like fake typewriter font, and the crawl reads. And just I'm gonna read it exactly as it is. So like when it sounds like I'm messing up words, I'm not. It goes. He joined Capcom in 1990. After directing several Disney games, he was given the opportunity to direct his own game, Resident Evil. Period, comma. After his success has been keeping busy producing many games developed by his teams.
And he's, I didn't catch all of that. Because he's like it's edited.
He's wearing sunglasses.
He's wearing sunglasses.
Right.
It's edited in that very like late 90s, early 2000s, like multiple angles, and we're cutting it all together.
It's like a David Fincher joint.
Yeah. The part that I thought that whole video was so bizarre, and at the very end he talks up like how scary Resident Evil 4 is going to be, and he like
Resident Evil will be scarier than ever before, and then he tags it with he says don't pee your pants.
Don't pee your pants while he's doing like finger guns at like directly at the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And
it is a wholly bizarre moment
it's
in
really
Nintendo
weird.
E3 history.
Yeah, it's really weird.
But so that's my R, the Resident Evil 4 check-in video.
My R is for Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Yeah?
You know, I mean, from the moment that Reggie appears at E3 2004, it is the famous, my name is Reggie, I'm about kicking ass, I'm about taking names, and we're about making games. It was an announcement of, like, a new attitude for Nintendo.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of an announcement of, like, fun dad. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm the dad who will casually swear in front of you.
That's right.
We're going to have fun, but like fun in a way that we shouldn't tell your mom about.
Yeah, he's like Nintendo's stepdad a little bit.
A little bit.
But yeah, like he was such for like 13 years, you know, he was such a presence for Nintendo. And like you said, he did have that, even in Nintendo's more like dire times, Reggie had that sort of like dude attitude.
Yeah.
That, you know, like in his way with like communicating with the game, with the press, and, you know, like.
Right. And like trolling them too. And like, you know, wearing a Mother 3 shirt or, you know, a Metroid pin or whatever. Like he would do these things that he would know would get a reaction from the video games press, and have nothing to back it up just because like it's fun to do, you know, it's fun to stir the pot.
Yeah. And it was, you know, like it was such a kind of like contrast to like we talked about last week, like a lot of what Nintendo was like presenting.
Yeah.
And they would do, but like Reggie would do it with this, you know, like attitude that I think played well exactly like they wanted it to the audience. And when they step away from that, which we'll talk about, or I plan to talk about like a little bit later, you can just feel people not knowing how to react to it.
Yeah. And there's something like interesting about, because like we don't need to like overplay his like broiness, because I don't think it was all the way there.
Right.
Like there's still like a sort of like dad energy to it. But I just remember there was I don't remember what presentation it is, but he's like, now I got to get back to playing Animal Crossing New Horizons on my Nintendo 3DS. And it's just like, what a interesting character they've sculpted with Reggie Fils-Aimé, who's going to like come out there, tell you he's about kicking ass, and then also be like, and now I'm going to go play Animal Crossing.
No, you're right. That is a really good point. He was able to modulate between, you know, that sort of like we're Nintendo and we're here to make a statement, and
Right.
then that like goofy dad energy where
Yes.
he's hanging out with like the Luigi mascot character, or making fun of him, like making jokes about himself, and some of like his like "my body is ready" memes and like all that kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
later.
Yeah, was a very effective like spokesman and like sort of everyman spokesman
And
for
huge
Nintendo.
presence at Nintendo's E3s.
Yep.
S, right,
Mhm.
is for my S is for smiling, and this is from E3 2008, talking exactly about like kind of what happens. Nintendo, or Reggie steps up to president of Nintendo of America, and we're in the middle of like the Wii's awkward era, and it's awkward. It's E3 2008 is kind of like the infamous E3 for Nintendo, where they
Yeah.
showed off Wii Music, where they showed off Wii Sports Resort, where they showed off like Wii Motion Plus for the first time. And it's a lot of like demos that don't go that great for the same reason like we talked about with Skyward Sword. And it's like, Nintendo's whole thing right now, they are knee deep in the blue ocean, but they are talking to an audience that could not care less.
Right. Well, you're talking about an audience that was committed to swimming with or without an ocean.
Yeah,
Right.
Because I think this is the one that they did at the Kodak Theater. Like,
Yeah.
it's this huge
Huge.
theater, packed full of press, and it's just like the wrong audience. Like, it's just the wrong audience for these sorts of announcements. Like,
Right.
this is like an enthusiast press and enthusiast audience that is looking for that next Metroid, is looking for that next like Zelda game.
Mario.
And instead they're showing like Wii Music, and it's a terrible showing for Wii Music. The game, the presentation like ends with Miyamoto and a few people from Nintendo Treehouse playing the Mario theme
Oh,
in
God.
Wii Music, and it sounds and looks horrible.
Yeah, it sounds horrible and looks stupid.
It's like, it's such a bad showing. But the presentation starts, their whole thing starts with this maybe like minute and a half, maybe that's too long, but it feels endless, video where they're that feels like it's for a church or a cult. They're showing these images of people like from all around the world laughing and smiling and holding their
Oh,
Nintendo
no.
Nintendo DSs and like playing Wii Sports together and all this stuff. And then at the end, in like the cheesiest like 2003 high school yearbook font that just says, "We promise to keep the world smiling," and it's very
2008, right?
But the font looks
I
like
understand,
it's from 2003.
I just wanted to make sure I hadn't like
Yeah, but it
slipped
was
through
it
time
was
here.
yeah, it was E3 2008. And it's just it just, now it makes me laugh. And that's another one of those examples where like looking back, you're not living through it. You're not like, "Oh my gosh, what is the future of Nintendo?" You're
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like watching Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull now, where you're like, yeah, okay, this is fine. This isn't the end of the world. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. And so looking back on it, it's just kind of like funny how
Yeah.
tone deaf it is, but in the moment it really felt like you were watching a train wreck.
That is really interesting, especially to compare with like you and I were chatting before we started recording about how at least at the time that we are recording, Nintendo's not shared any like video or even screenshots of everybody 1-2 Switch. We just have that single tweet announcement. And I wonder if they're just like, you know what? We learned our lesson. We show people what Wii Music is, and like it doesn't work. So like, why bother?
But I feel like you could cut together a much more effective trailer for Wii Music
Yes, I would totally.
than when they were like doing it live very poorly.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure how I would show Wii Music. It's a tough game to show.
It is a tough game.
My S is for Samus Returns. This is the remake of Metroid 2: The Return of Samus, which was revealed after their Nintendo's E3 Direct during the Nintendo Live Treehouse. It is 2017. Mark, you and I had to stop recording and check out what was going on TV because we were we had met at my place to watch the direct. We were excited to record an episode immediately afterward, and I was like, "Oh, we'll just leave the treehouse on while we record, so that we just see it. It'll be fine." And I could see them like bringing out like a Metroid amiibo, and was like, "Hold on a second." And we stopped and we watched them explain that this game, which like to my knowledge, this is the biggest game that has ever been revealed in a treehouse with like no other preamble to it. It's just like, here it is. I know we just had a huge presentation, but this game wasn't part of it for some reason. This is a game that I ended up loving and 100%ing. But yeah, what a wild thing for them to do.
Yeah, and it kind of you're right. I think it's the only time they've ever done anything like that. But anytime they did Treehouse Live after,
That's true.
years after, you're like, maybe we should wait a little bit and see if they end up pulling a Samus Returns. Also, like, what a cool, especially now that we know that those same developers did Dread, and kind of, looking back, you're like, oh, this was in a lot of ways the rebirth of the Metroid franchise.
Totally. Absolutely was. And it was also a 3DS game in the post Switches out there world. But like, certainly not like the last 3DS game by a pretty wide margin.
But
right?
I would say the last that mattered. Because the Switch pretty quickly sucked up all of the oxygen. And I think even by the time the Samus Returns released, like 3DS software was dropping off a cliff really quickly. But I would say the last one that like was a megaton announcement.
Sure, like the Mario and Luigi remakes would come out, or at least the second one came out like after.
Yeah, and they released like Luigi's Mansion remake and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, that is right. But it certainly is one of the last like big ones that matters. My T is for Triforce Partnership, which I had to like look back into, and it was like, what was this? What is this? Satoru Iwata mentions it at E3 2003. Now we've mentioned it, I don't know, 100 times because what a weird year. But it was a partnership that had been revealed the previous year. But Iwata is sort of positioning it as like the stopgap solution for like Nintendo doesn't have enough like hardcore gamer appeasing pieces of software coming down the pipe right now. But it's a partnership between Namco, Sega, and Nintendo to make Nintendo games. And the example that he shows off is F-Zero GX, and is like, it is both like the arcade experience and the upcoming GameCube game, and all three of those companies, Namco would be developing the arcade version, Sega the GameCube version, and it's all a Nintendo IP. So that's the Triforce partnership. This is a Namco before being Bandai Namco. It's just it's a weird little like quirk of, and the companies do a lot of development together.
Yeah, didn't Namco like end up, they made like a Star Fox game, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean they're mostly responsible for Smash Brothers, really.
Oh, right. Bandai Namco now does a lot of support. I mean, heck, they were they were originally developing Metroid Prime 4 before they moved that to Retro. Yeah.
And the first it's not, the Triforce partnership is not something that is much spoken about or written about, but here's Iwata saying it on stage as like, this is how we're going to get some more hardcore games coming out.
That's really cool. I never really understood the genesis of like Sega working on F-Zero or Namco doing like a Star Fox game. That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, and like, is another one of the, like, what makes Nintendo development great is they have very strong partnerships with developers, and then like we have either the like talent or resources to supplement these things so that you get something like truly special and call it a Nintendo game, even when it comes out of Namco or Sega or whoever.
My T is for Tethers, and this is after the 3DS reveal at E3 2010. As Reggie's like, and we want you to be able to experience this today. And as he's saying this, a veritable army of women
Mhm.
in matching black pants, black heels, black blazers with like a white t-shirt underneath, with 3DSs tethered to their midsections.
Right. You are not running away with this 3DS
No,
without
are, like,
also dragging
one of these women
a
with
woman
you.
behind you.
Yep, like come like marching out from behind Reggie, and we're talking. There must have been like 100,
Yeah.
and they just start like flooding the Nokia theater, and it is really funny to watch. It's just
It's so
funny.
strange. Well, and like because the strategy here is obvious, right? That you need people need to actually hold and see
Yeah.
a 3DS because there is literally no way to approximate the experience of seeing the 3D on these things.
Uh-huh.
So like you just have to experience it. And then like the other part of it is like there's always this culture, or there was for a long time this culture of like booth babes, and like using sort of like sex to attract people into like checking out video games. And Nintendo's always like the tame version of that, where it's just like, and they still do this as recently as the last E3 that we went to. Like, they just have the most attractive people working these like demos and stuff. It's always true, right?
It is always true.
Everyone's so hot at these things.
It's really, really, really funny to me
Yeah.
to watch this video and like see this army of women in
Yeah.
matching outfits
Yes.
with 3DSs tethered to their midsections come like goose stepping out, but of the curtain behind Reggie.
Yeah.
And I feel like nowadays, like, that was 13 years ago. I feel like nowadays it'd probably just be like people of all genders,
Totally.
like more casual, but it's a really funny image. So yeah, T for tethers.
Very good.
My U is Unreal Engine 3, which was for the Wii U, and we got a glimpse of this, even though we didn't like know it in the presentation at E3 2011 when they showed off Darksiders 2 coming to the system,
Yeah.
and like you mentioned, Arkham City, the like armored edition.
Mhm.
Both of those were running on Unreal Engine 3, and even though Epic would like reveal Unreal Engine 4 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and it was not compatible, like they were not supporting the Wii U with it. The fact that Nintendo had a console that could run a like Unreal Engine 3 was a big deal.
Yeah.
It didn't really end up being a big deal, I would say.
Sure,
but
it's more conceptually a big deal.
yeah, that it was a sign that like, oh, maybe things are different with the Wii U than as far as third-party support would
Yeah.
go than with the Wii. That we would be getting games that were more on par with what was being released on other platforms, or that like
Or had been released a couple of years prior.
right. But the promise was there that like, oh, like games that are developed for. I mean, I guess the thing is, again, the Wii U was just it was just like stepping on rakes all over the place because
Yeah.
you got Unreal Engine 3
Mhm.
support, but it wasn't going to get Unreal Engine 4 support, and that's what all the new games were being built on. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is truly just like the training wheels for the Switch. And I'm glad they got all that like awkward stuff out before getting to the Switch. Even though I'm sure there's some awkward stuff in the Switch era, and maybe we'll even talk about some of it in a second here. My U is Ubisoft's 2017 E3 conference, which this is the first time we're going to mention a not Nintendo press conference during these, because they're showing off Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and Yves Guillemot brings out Shigeru Miyamoto to like. He doesn't even really talk about the game that much. He comes out and he's got like a Mario arm cannon on his hand, and Bill Trinen comes out and with like a second arm cannon, so Yves Guillemot and Miyamoto can like pose with each other with these guns, and they're just like very silly. And there's a moment where Miyamoto is talking about like Ubisoft has always been like a supporter of Nintendo products, like especially when it's early in the generation, they always have like something to go on there, but then also like ribs him a little bit, being like, well, we're both software developers, so like you're also the competition, and it's just very cute. Like we were talking before about how like we mostly get like a look at Miyamoto when he's like, I like Donkey Kong and we're playing this game. But like this is a little bit of like Miyamoto the businessman being like, I value my business relationships. It's a very sweet moment, and it just connects the like Nintendo and Ubisoft histories in a way that's very pleasing to me.
Yeah, that was a fun. The fact that Mario plus Rabbids was real and that it turned out to be good.
Yeah.
Like all of it was just like just a really like cool moment.
Yeah, I like that moment a lot. My V.
I think so.
Okay. My V is The Virtual Boy. 1995
Wow.
at E3. Nintendo has nothing to show off because they're too far out from the release of the Nintendo 64. And the majority of their presentation is Gunpei Yokoi showing off The Virtual Boy, which already at this point seemed like it was dead on arrival. I found because there's no like video of this thing because it's from 1995. But I found an article on UGO written by Chris Plant, who was looking back on the Virtual Boy E3 reveal 15 years after the fact. So that article itself was 13 years ago. And I just pulled some kind of choice bits from this article. He writes, the uneven playing field wasn't new for Yokoi. At its launch, the Game Boy contained outdated guts, but the Game Boy also offered a unique portable experience. Users could pick up the game at the store and play it on their car ride home. Yokoi's portable proved players were willing to sacrifice visuals or comfort for a special experience. Now, 6 years after Game Boy's release, Yokoi needed lightning to strike twice. Kind of goes on to say like that there wasn't a lot of support for the thing, and it was kind of buggy. Even the demos that were available. Questions arose about why there were so few third-party licenses. Quote, only Hudson Soft and Kemco had demos on the show floor, and Kemco's Virtual League Baseball was broken. The code literally prevented players from hitting the ball.
Wow.
And then he goes on to say, in an interview with Next Generation magazine in April of 1995, Yokoi had already addressed third-party concerns. When the magazine asked about users' disappointment with the console, Yokoi responded, I think that the most important point is to show the general public and third-party developers what kinds of functions the Virtual Boy has. When pressed about the low number of third-party licenses Nintendo had signed out, Yokoi flip-flopped. We haven't been eager to show this technology to many third parties. Ouch.
Yeah.
Little side note, by the next year at E3, Nintendo announced that they were dropping the price of the Virtual Boy to $100, and that was the last time they spoke publicly about the system.
Man, that makes me want to like scour the internet to see if there's some footage of that 1995
Right?
E3, because I would love to see like Nintendo talking up the Virtual Boy, like how they were like positioning it and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and like I wonder if they were even able to successfully do that or not. Like, it sounds like it was just like Yokoi on stage with the Virtual Boy, like trying his best to like make it sound like an attractive piece of hardware.
Wow.
And famously it was not. So.
Well, my V is Versus, as in Pac-Man Versus. Coming back to E3 2003, which for some reason or another is our
it's the next
favorite E3 to talk about.
Here's the thing. It is a black hole, right? There's so much gravity to that 2003 presentation that like it's hard to escape it. Time warps as you try to orbit it.
And here we are again,
Yep.
20 years older, even though it's been just a few minutes, talking about E3 2003 one more time. But Pac-Man Versus, again, this is one where, like, with the benefit of hindsight, it's interesting to watch this presentation. But at the time, like, E3 2003 is kind of, like, notoriously another, like, low year for Nintendo. They just didn't have anything to show.
Yeah.
But so Miyamoto is talking about, again, with Bill Trinan as his interpreter, is talking about, like his favorite games from Nintendo are Donkey Kong and Mario, but his favorite video game from other companies is Pac-Man. And so they bring out the inventor of Pac-Man,
Shohei Iwatani.
and you can tell that like Miyamoto and him, like have a friendly relationship. Like they seem like, like again, they seem to have like good
This is
chemistry.
also where Miyamoto is like, so I made a Pac-Man game.
Yes, exactly. And that also was so like, because this was 20 years ago, and you're like, yeah, 20 years ago, Miyamoto was still involved in Nintendo
Crazy
development.
Yes.
Like because now
like
he's
day to day.
he's like a figurehead, and he's moved on to like higher concept things. Like he's leading the, working really closely on the movie and the theme parks, like kind of setting the path for those within Nintendo.
He's also single-handedly responsible for our community getting into Pikmin Bloom.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, join the Discord.
Join the Discord.
You can,
We're partying up in Pikmin Bloom every week to do these 100,000 step challenges.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Miyamoto.
Yeah, but yeah, to go back to this one, it's like, this Pac-Man Versus was literally, he's the credited designer on Pac-Man Versus. And the way it started was like, it was created as a tech demo to show off the capabilities of the GameCube link cable to the Game Boy Advance. And they showed it to Namco at like a trade show or whatever. And they came to this agreement where the game was developed by Nintendo with Namco, and it's published by Namco. It is a Miyamoto designed game that is published by Namco. And so
this is that Triforce partnership.
There you go. And so Pac-Man Versus is a game where
why the heck then didn't Nintendo make a Sonic game?
Can you imagine
sliding
in 2003?
doors? Oh my god.
That's right. What would Miyamoto's haircut look like if he All right, sliding doors reference for the Gwen fans out there.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that the game worked is that one person played on the Game Boy Advance, and you were Pac-Man, and then the other players played on the GameCube itself with like GameCube controllers. So they were playing on the TV, and you played as ghosts. And so you were controlling the ghosts, and you were like trying to like get Pac-Man, avoid Pac-Man at different times. And I've actually never played this game.
Yeah,
have you played it?
No. I mean, it requires a strange setup now.
Totally. So. I feel like there is some sort of like Nintendo Land energy in this.
Absolutely.
With like the Wii U gamepad, that asymmetric multiplayer gameplay. But it's a very like kind of like fun and endearing moment because Miyamoto seems genuinely enthused about like being able to like work with Pac-Man. Yeah, it's kind of again, not like a super long moment, but I think worth checking out from E3 2003.
Sort of an extension of my U, right? Of like the Ubisoft thing where he gets to
totally
have a human developer to developer moment with Yves Guillemot. That then he has this with Iwatani is
like
very
appear
nice.
And like seemingly like a friend,
Mm-hmm.
My W is for Wind Waker. And in the and this is from the moment I want to call out is E3 2002. And we had talked about this in the first episode, and I feel like this is a prime example of kind of, you had it with Animal Crossing, where it's like Nintendo of Japan has developed this game that has a very specific aesthetic. A lot of it is like cute and friendly. And then Nintendo of America has to turn around and try to sell it to an audience who is not interested in that, who is interested in extreme, who is interested in, loud and violent. And so this trailer that they show at E3 2002 for Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is that disconnect on like hyper display, because you have, like Link, and it's just a trailer. It's not like a gameplay demo. It's just, Link doing Link things and looking cute because he's cell shaded and, you know, having like all this personality, the world having all this personality. And it is set to this, another trend at the time, which is just like this really like Lord of the Rings movie score riff.
Yes.
Like rip off, where it's like, okay, we want to, so it's this really like epic and, like emotional music playing while like, like cartoon Link is running around doing like cute things and picking things up. And it just totally, like, I understand why they did it, but it's totally seems to defeat the purpose.
Yeah, you're not selling the thing that you think you're selling.
Such a bad showcase for what the game actually is.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny to me.
Yeah, that was during the era when like everything was scored with the orchestral version of the Requiem for a Dream soundtrack.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Ba-na-na-na. Yeah, that is a disaster of a trailer, and especially because like if you just like show the game and like play the music from the game, it's so charming.
It is, and that's just what's so weird is like people didn't want it.
Yeah,
Like they genuinely, like the first time they showed Wind Waker, Miyamoto was genuinely supposedly like shocked by
Yeah.
the negative reaction to it. It was like, oh, we're not showing anything again until we have like more gameplay to show, because the reaction was really visceral,
Yeah.
viscerally negative.
Yeah. Nintendo fans, man, we're a weird bunch. My W is we make games worth playing. From the 2004 E3, again, just sort of like living in this having to be darker and edgier than they really were. What a terrible time the beginning of the 21st century was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Nintendo just being like, I don't know, we're sweet and we like to have fun, but also having to be like, we make games worth playing, which is then followed by the edgiest and darkest sizzle reel of Nintendo games you'll ever see in your life. And the only games worth mentioning out of it are Resident Evil 4 and Metroid Prime. Truly great games, but not great because they were dark and scary, but because they're fun games. But yeah, just the hubris of having a tagline of "We make games worth playing" had to shout out here.
It is, because you mentioned that those were the only two games in the sizzle reel that were worth calling out. It is also funny watching these presentations back, and you see them spending all this like marketing time on games that made no impact.
Yeah.
In hindsight,
Yep.
like the E3 2008, when I was going through that, they have like Shaun White's snowboarding, which is using like the Wii balance board. Like I totally forgot that existed. There was Spore Creatures for the Nintendo DS. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
all of it, all these things. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that was a thing. Spore was like a thing. My X or your X?
My X.
Okay.
My X is Xenoblade Chronicles X. This is from E3 2013. We didn't even have the name on this one. They didn't show that it was a Xenoblade Chronicles game. They just sort of like teased it with the Monolith Soft logo, and then like footage of the game being played. So like getting in these giant mechs and exploring, an enormous world that only a Xenoblade game at that time could deliver on Wii U. And then there's a big red X on the screen at the end, and it ends with the Wii U logo. Just sort of again, the like constant restatement of purpose for Nintendo being like, no, we make real games that are like hardcore and tough and scary and have giant robots in them.
I do feel like that is one thing that is really nice about the Switch era, is it feels like they have like, maybe because it's successful, it's feels like, and it has like third-party support. Like I don't really know what has changed, but it feels like they've freed themselves, at least momentarily.
Sometimes every now and then they do like dip into the like, no, we're still like this is like a little bit more not what you expect from Nintendo. Or like, do you remember the trailers for like Daemon X Machina, whereas like another mech game, so maybe that's why I'm thinking about it, but then this like really like hard like heavy metal music.
But I
and
feel like
stuff.
that's appropriate for the game.
Sure,
I
sure,
feel like
yeah.
that's the difference.
Yeah,
Is that
I
like
agree.
like they don't have to like front
Yeah.
in the Switch era.
Right.
It's like they're able to, because the like Nintendo's franchises, they've been presenting them the way they want to, and they've been successful, right? Like
Totally.
they don't have to try to like danger up Link's Awakening. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
yes.
so I feel like they've been freed of that burden of trying to pretend that their games are something they're not, and they're letting like third-party developers pick up that slack, and it's kind of refreshing. Who knows how long that'll last, but for now they're kind of freed from having to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
My X is for X-Men, as featured in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3: The Black Order.
Ooh.
Which was shown
good
off
pull.
which was showed off at E3 2019, another one that we demoed at the time. But
Oh yeah.
but this is one that I, in that great tradition of like the Triforce, what was it called? Like
Triforce partnership.
the Triforce partnership. Like this was a Nintendo published title that was developed by Koei Tecmo, Team Ninja, and it's one of those that just
and in association with Marvel, obviously.
yeah, it's just one of those that I would just love to know what the genesis of this was. I don't
Yeah.
think there had been a Ultimate Alliance game for like 10 years or something
Yeah, it'd been a long time.
at this point, and how did this come to be?
And it's sort of also a little bit on the heels of like the Marvel video game side really downplaying the connection to the X-Men as well. Like Marvel versus Capcom Infinite had come out just a couple years prior, and all the X-Men are absent from the game, despite the fact that like Wolverine and Cyclops and Magneto are like mainstays of the Marvel versus Capcom universe. They're just like, Disney doesn't own the right to make those movies, so they're not going to let us put them in these other games.
Yeah, that's right. And then, yeah, I wonder. This is like kind of like Disney stuff, but so the head of Marvel, that like entertainment that just got
Ike Perlmutter.
Ike Pearl. Yeah, I wonder if he was kind of like the genesis of that stance, where it was like,
Yeah, I wonder.
we don't know the rights, so we're not like, it's all Inhumans, it's not X-Men.
Right.
And then when Kevin Feige, when he kind of got like his power taken away a little bit, and Kevin Feige moved to a different division and kind of could do his own thing, that maybe his powers diminished and they were more free to use X-Men stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure either.
But yeah, the game itself is just kind of like I never beat it, but played a little bit of it. It's a Marvel Ultimate Alliance game. Like it was fun, kind of like forgettable for what it is. But how did it come to be? Why did Nintendo publish it? I would just love to know.
We'll never know. Mark, you had expressed earlier that you might not have a
And
Y.
I don't. I'm sorry to
Here's
say
the thing.
I have no Y.
I don't have a Z. So
Okay, all
So
right.
I'll do my Y, you do your Z,
Okay.
and then we'll get out of here. I was sort of saving Z. I was like, I'll think of a Zelda, but we've talked so much Zelda already that I don't have one. My Y, and look, this is we've ragged a lot on Nintendo for not knowing how to sell what they are, the products they actually have. My Y is an example of them knowing exactly what the heck they're doing, and my Y is for Yarn in Yoshi's Woolly World in E3. Oh, I didn't write the year. Maybe 2015 or 16. They're advertising Yoshi's Woolly World, and they have an interview with one of the developers on the game, Emi Watanabe, and she was working with like the game director on some stuff. Isn't actually a programmer or an artist, so she wanted to contribute in some way. So she started making yarn Yoshis, like physical yarn Yoshis that they had like around the office, and they were like, "That's cute. Let's make those into amiibo." And it's just like a quiet interview with this woman who like made these yarn Yoshis, and it's like heartwarming and fun and cute, which is exactly what Yoshi's Woolly World was, and exactly what those amiibos were. It's just the perfect way to present this game is by like, here's how a real person made these things in real life.
That's so fun. I don't remember that at all. That's so fun.
It's so super cute.
My Z is a Zelda one.
Here we go.
It
Zelda!
is. It's maybe the like premier Nintendo E3 moment of the last 20 years. If you haven't seen it, search it out. It is Shigeru Miyamoto storming the stage with the Master Sword and Link's, like shield in hands after the trailer for Twilight Princess is played for the first time to an audience that just loses their mind over the trailer. Because again, this is coming on the heels of Wind Waker, which at the time had like mixed reception. This was the Twilight Princess, this was the Zelda game that, like fans wanted. It was kind of like realistic looking and felt grittier, and that's how Nintendo was selling it. And so there's this trailer that people are losing their minds over. Yeah, and then, there's smoke on stage, and the screen, like, the curtains, like, part or lift up, and there's Shigeru Miyamoto with these things, and everybody just goes bananas. They just lose their minds. And it would be incredible. It'd be transcendent to watch that, to have that happen in person. And
then for Miyamoto to appear in front of you.
Yeah,
yes.
it's great. It's such a cool moment, and kind of like the perfect capstone, I feel like, for Nintendo E3.
Yeah, and it is funny how frequently they're like, I don't know, put toys in Miyamoto's hands.
No, it's so true.
Like, he just lights up. He comes alive
Uh-huh.
when you like make him out to be a video game character. But that's true. That is a quintessentially Nintendo moment, and the kind of thing that, you know, someday. Well, I guess, when's the last time we saw something like that?
I feel like there's just so few, and that is, I feel like, one of the downsides to the filmed presentations
Yeah.
is that you don't, yes, on the one side you don't get like the dead air or the awkward, you know, like non-laughs from when the presenters are making jokes, but you also lose like these like shared moments that
Yeah.
can only happen when like people are reacting live to what is being shown to them in the moment, you know,
Right,
that
right.
kind of like
Right,
immediate
like, 'cause,
fan feedback.
like, thinking about the last time we got those from Nintendo, and it's the Switch reveal in early 2017, right? Of like Yoshiaki Koizumi like lounging on that little couch
Right.
and being like, you can play with your arms this far apart. Or like the Splatoon 2 guy being like doing his like making the number 2 out of his body, or like Suda51 like
Oh my gosh,
like
yeah.
going off script and the translator not being able to keep up with him. Like, all of those moments, those are just off the dome. I did no research for that. Those are like impactful moments, and I'm trying to think of, we didn't pull that much from recent E3s, except where we were at, where they were live experiences, you and me on the show floor. And I think that says a lot about like what's impactful, what's interesting. They may have landed on a better way to sell things, or a cooler way to sell things, but they've definitely lost some of the impact in transitioning to the directs.
Totally.
So I know last week we said we don't miss them, but maybe I'm going back on it. Maybe I miss the live stage shows.
It's the highs and lows, right? Like, and now like everything is just kind of like the middle.
Yeah, sure. We used to have Michael Keaton Batman. Now we've got Marvel movies. I get it. All right, Mark, let's close out our A to Z of Nintendo's E3. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Thank you so much to Connor McCabe, our 16-bit patron. We appreciate you, bud, and we appreciate everyone who subscribes to the Patreon and listens to the show at all. Join the Discord, email us, and we will send you an invitation. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.